The text that destroyed James Parker's life was sent at exactly 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. A flirty message meant for his dinner date that accidentally went to Victoria Reynolds, CEO of the pharmaceutical company that held his daughter's life in their hands. His stomach dropped as he stared at his phone in horror, realizing his catastrophic mistake, looking forward to tonight. Can't stop thinking about your smile and wondering what it would be like to kiss you. James had 5 minutes of panic before his doorbell rang. 5 minutes to contemplate how he just torpedoed his last chance to get his 8-year-old daughter Lily into the experimental treatment program that could save her life. Victoria Reynolds, known throughout the business world as the Ice Queen, had personally driven to his modest suburban home after receiving his message. As he approached the door with trembling hands, James knew this wasn't just embarrassing. It was potentially devastating. Without Reynolds Pharmaceuticals' treatment program, Lily's rare immune disorder would continue to progress, and the single father would lose the only person left in his world who mattered. When he opened the door, Victoria Reynolds stood on his porch looking nothing like her polished magazine covers. Her normally perfect blonde hair was slightly windblown, and her piercing blue eyes were wide with an emotion James couldn't identify. She mortgaged, but something about her seemed almost human. "Mr. Parker," she said, her voice surprisingly soft, "I believe we need to discuss the message you sent me." James felt his face burn with shame. "Miss Reynolds, I am so incredibly sorry." That text was never meant. She held up one perfectly manicured hand. "May I come in? I think we have more to discuss than just an errant text message." Confused and terrified, James stepped aside to let her enter his home. Toys were scattered across the living room floor, and dishes from breakfast still sat in the sink. He'd been so focused on preparing for tomorrow's meeting with Reynolds Pharmaceuticals, his last hope for getting Lily into their treatment program, that housekeeping had fallen by the wayside. "Daddy, who's here?" Lily appeared in the hallway, her small frame swimming in a too large unicorn pajama set, her once thick brown hair now thin from treatments. Despite everything, her smile still lit up the room. What happened next left James speechless. Victoria Reynolds, the woman whose ruthless business tactics had earned her the nickname the Ice Queen, knelt down to Lily's level. "Hello there, I'm Victoria. I work at the company that makes medicine." Her voice had transformed completely, warm and gentle, where moments before it had been controlled and professional. "Are you the lady who can help make me better?" Lily asked with the directness only children possess. Victoria's composed expression faltered for just a moment. "I'm certainly going to try," she said, and James could have sworn he saw her eyes glisten. "Would it be okay if I talk to your dad for a little while?" After Lily reluctantly returned to her room, Victoria turned to James with an intensity that made him nervous. "Your daughter is the reason you've been trying to meet with my company for the past 4 months. "Yes," James admitted. "Lily has Harrington syndrome. Your company's experimental treatment is showing the most promise, but we've been denied entry into the trial 3 times. Tomorrow's appeal was our last chance." Victoria's gaze traveled around the modest home, taking in the family photos, the medical bills stacked on the counter, the calendar on the wall marked with hospital appointments. "You're raising her alone. Her mother died when Lily was 4. Car accident." The words still felt raw even after 4 years. "Look about that text." "The text is why I'm here," Victoria interrupted, her voice suddenly businesslike again. "Mr. Parker, I received your message during a board meeting. I excused myself to read your file, and what I found disturbed me greatly." She pulled out her tablet and showed him his application history. "Your case should have been prioritized months ago. Someone buried it deliberately." James felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "What? Why would anyone do that?" Victoria's expression hardened. "That's exactly what I intend to find out. But first, I want to hear about Lily. Not from a clinical file, but from her father." James ran his hand through his dark brown hair, the stress of the past years visible in the premature gray at his temples. "In 36, He looked older, the weight of being both mother and father to a seriously ill child etched into the lines around his warm hazel eyes. His faded jeans and simple blue button-down shirt were a stark contrast to Victoria's polished appearance. "I don't even know where to begin," he said, gesturing for her to sit at the small kitchen table. "Coffee?" Victoria nodded, setting her designer handbag on the chair beside her. Up close, James noticed details about her that never appeared in business magazines. A small scar near her right eyebrow, the slight asymmetry of her smile, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was thinking. At 42, Victoria Reynolds had built an empire, but sitting in his cluttered kitchen, she seemed more approachable than her reputation suggested. Lily was always healthy until she turned 6. James began placing a mug of coffee in front of Victoria. She came home from school with a fever one day. We thought it was just a cold, but it never went away. Then came the joint pain, the rashes, the constant infections. His voice caught. 3 doctors, and 6 months later, we finally got the diagnosis: Harrington syndrome. Victoria listened intently as James described the rare autoimmune disorder that caused Lily's immune system to attack her own tissues. He explained the failed treatments, the hospitalizations, the way Lily's once boundless energy had diminished as the disease progressed. "She used to dance," he said softly, showing Victoria a photo on his phone of a younger, healthier Lily in a ballet costume. "Now she gets winded walking to the mailbox. The standard immunosuppressants help with the symptoms, but cause other problems. Your company's targeted therapy is the first real hope we've had." Victoria's perfectly composed facade cracked slightly as she studied the photo. "And you've been denied entry to the trial 3 times. "Yes. First, they said her case wasn't severe enough. Then they said it was too severe. The last rejection just said not eligible with no explanation." James's frustration was evident. Tomorrow's appeal was our last shot. I was going to bring all her medical records, letters from her doctors, anything to convince them. Victoria's blue eyes flashed with something that looked like anger. "You shouldn't have had to fight this hard." She pulled out her phone and sent a rapid-fire text, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency. "I'm having my assistant pull every communication about Lily's case. I want to know exactly who made these decisions and why." That evening, sitting at his kitchen table with one of the most powerful women in the pharmaceutical industry, James shared Lily's journey, the devastating diagnosis at age 6, the failed treatments, the mounting medical bills that had forced him to sell their family home and move to this smaller house. As a high school science teacher, his salary and insurance covered the basics, but the experimental treatments were financially out of reach without the clinical trial. "She's so brave," James said, his voice breaking as he showed Victoria photos of Lily before her illness. A vibrant little girl with wild curly hair and a mischievous smile. "She never complains, even on her worst days." Victoria listened intently, occasionally making notes on her tablet. When Lily called out for a glass of water, James excused himself. Upon returning, he found Victoria standing by the bookshelf, studying a photo of him and Lily at the beach last summer. "She has your eyes," Victoria observed softly. Then more businesslike, "Mr. Parker, I'm adding Lily to the treatment program effective immediately. I'll have the paperwork delivered tomorrow." James nearly dropped the water glass. Just like that. "But we've been trying for months." Victoria's expression darkened. "Yes, and I'll be addressing that internal failure tomorrow. Someone deliberately obstructed your application, and I intend to find out who and why." She closed her tablet with a decisive click. "But that's not your concern. Your concern is Lily, and I promise you she will get the treatment she needs." As the night deepened, Victoria revealed something that stunned James. "My younger sister had Harrington syndrome 20 years ago, before there were any effective treatments." Her perfectly composed facade cracked slightly. "That's why I built Reynolds Pharmaceuticals the way I did to develop treatments for rare diseases that other companies ignore because they're not profitable enough." "I had no idea," James said softly. Your company bio doesn't mention a sister. Some things are too personal for corporate websites, Victoria replied, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. Sophia was 12 when she died. I was 17 and promised her I'd find a way to help other children like her. She looked toward Lily's bedroom. Children like your daughter. Victoria's phone buzzed with an incoming message. She glanced at it, her expression shifting from open vulnerability to something harder. I need to make a call. Do you mind? James gestured toward the back porch. Take your time. Through the kitchen window, he watched as Victoria paced the small wooden deck, her posture rigid as she spoke into her phone. Even from a distance, he could see the transformation. The warm, compassionate woman who had sat at his table was gone, replaced by the formidable CEO whose reputation struck fear into pharmaceutical executives across the country. Her free hand gestured sharply as she spoke, her expression intense. This was the Victoria Reynolds the business world knew. Commanding, uncompromising, fierce. When she returned, some of that intensity lingered in her eyes. I've just spoken with my head of clinical trials. There appears to have been interference in Lily's case. Someone with a personal agenda. What kind of interference? James asked, alarmed. Victoria hesitated, choosing her words carefully. My ex-husband sits on the board. He oversees the clinical trial division. It seems he's been selective about which cases receive approval. Your ex-husband blocked my daughter's treatment. James felt a surge of anger. Why would he do that? Because he knew it would matter to me, Victoria said quietly. He's been bitter since our divorce 3 years ago. He knows how personal the Harringtons' research is to me because of Sophia. Her composed expression faltered for a moment. I never imagined he would stoop to using patients as pawns in his vendetta against me. James struggled to process this information. So, if I hadn't sent that text by mistake, he would have continued blocking Lily's application, and I might never have known about it. Victoria finished. Corporate bureaucracy is very effective at burying things. The realization that his daughter's life had been caught in the crossfire of a corporate power struggle made James feel sick. That's monstrous. Yes, Victoria agreed, her voice hard, and he will be removed from the board by this time tomorrow. I've already called an emergency meeting. She looked at James with unexpected gentleness. But none of that matters for Lily. What matters is that she starts treatment immediately. As Victoria prepared to leave, she paused at the door. The treatment program starts next week. I'll send a car for you and Lily on Monday morning. Her professional tone had returned, but something in her eyes had changed. And Mr. Parker, about that text message, James winced again. I'm so sorry. It was completely inappropriate, Anne. It was the first genuine human communication I've received in months, she interrupted, surprising him. Everyone is too intimidated to speak to me like a person. Your mistake was refreshing. A hint of a smile touched her lips, though. Perhaps save the kissing comments for after we've actually met properly. With that, she was gone, leaving James stunned in his doorway. Had his mortifying text message error actually saved his daughter's life? And why did the notorious Ice Queen seem so different from her fearsome reputation? The next morning, James woke to find a sleek black car parked outside his house. The driver delivered an envelope containing all the paperwork for Lily's admission to the treatment program, along with a handwritten note from Victoria. Treatment starts Monday. Don't worry about transportation. A car will pick you up at 80 East Gam. My personal cell is included if you have any questions. V. When James told Lily she was starting the new medicine on Monday, her reaction broke his heart. Instead of excitement, her first response was worry. But Daddy, how will we pay for it? You said it costs more than our house. He knelt beside her bed, taking her small hands in his. We don't have to worry about that anymore, sweetheart. Ms. Reynolds is making sure you get the medicine as part of a special program. Lily's eyes widened. The pretty lady who knows about medicine. Is she going to be there on Monday? I think she might be, James said, surprised by his daughter's immediate attachment to Victoria. Good, Lily declared with the certainty only children possess. I like her. She didn't talk to me like I'm a baby, and she smells nice, like the flowers Mommy used to grow. James felt a lump form in his throat at the mention of Sarah, Lily's mother. In the 4 years since the car accident that took her life, Lily rarely mentioned her mother unprompted. That she would connect Victoria to this precious memory felt significant somehow. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation and nervous anticipation. On Monday morning, precisely at 8 or 9 a.m., a black car pulled up outside their house. To James's surprise, Victoria herself stepped out, dressed in a more casual outfit than he'd seen her in before, tailored black pants and a simple blue blouse, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders. "Good morning," she said, her smile warming her entire face. "I thought I'd accompany you both today, if that's all right. First days can be intimidating." Lily, who had been nervous all morning, immediately brightened at the sight of Victoria. "You came. Daddy said you might." Victoria knelt to Lily's level, seemingly unconcerned about creasing her expensive clothes. "I wouldn't miss it. And I brought you something." She handed Lily a small gift bag. Inside was a beautiful journal with a night sky cover. "It's for recording your journey," Victoria explained. "When my sister was sick, she kept a journal of all her good days. It helped her remember that even during treatment, there were still beautiful moments." Lily clutched the journal to her chest. "Thank you. I'm going to write about today because it's already a good day." In the car, Victoria explained the treatment process to both of them, breaking down complex medical terminology into language Lily could understand without talking down to her. James watched in amazement as his daughter, normally shy around strangers, peppered Victoria with questions that the CEO answered with infinite patience. At the hospital, James expected Victoria to hand them off to the medical staff and return to her corporate duties. Instead, she stayed through the entire first treatment, working remotely from her laptop during the 4-hour infusion, occasionally stepping out for urgent calls, but always returning to Lily's side. When a nurse had trouble finding a vein for Lily's 4, Victoria held the little girl's hand and told her stories about constellations to distract her from the discomfort. When Lily fell asleep during the infusion, Victoria quietly covered her with a blanket, her touch gentle and maternal in a way that made James's heart ache. "You don't have to stay," James said softly as they watched Lily sleep. "I'm sure you have more important things to do." Victoria looked at him with surprise. "More important than this?" She shook her head. "James, I've spent 20 years building a company to create treatments like this. Watching them actually help a child, that's the most important thing I could possibly do today." 3 weeks later, Lily had started the treatment program, and the initial results were promising. Her energy was improving, and the persistent infections that had plagued her were becoming less frequent. James had just tucked her into bed when his phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Treatment results looking excellent. Would you be available for dinner Friday to discuss Lily's progress?" His finger hovered over the reply button. Their interactions had remained strictly professional during Lily's hospital visits, though he'd caught Victoria watching him with an unreadable expression several times. Was this dinner invitation purely about Lily's medical care? Or was there something more to it? Before he could respond, another text arrived. "And to be clear, this is not just about Lily's treatment. I've been thinking about your smile too, James." What James didn't know as he typed his reply was that Victoria was sitting in her car outside his house again, gathering the courage to ring his doorbell. The woman, who had built an empire and a reputation for being untouchable, was terrified of the feelings this single father and his brave daughter had awakened in her. Could she risk her heart after keeping it carefully guarded for so many years? Victoria gripped her steering wheel, her knuckles white against the black leather. She'd left a board meeting early, making vague excuses about a doctor's appointment. The truth that she couldn't stop thinking about a high school science teacher with kind eyes and his brave little girl would have shocked her colleagues. Victoria Reynolds, distracted by feelings. Impossible. Yet here she was, parked outside his modest home for the second time, her heart racing like a teenager's. She'd spent 20 years building her company and reputation, focusing solely on her mission to make life-saving medications accessible. Personal relationships had always been collateral damage to her ambition, necessary sacrifices for the greater good, but something about James Parker and his daughter had slipped past her defenses. Perhaps it was the way he fought so tirelessly for Lily, never becoming bitter despite the obstacles thrown in his path. Perhaps it was seeing her sister's struggle reflected in Lily's brave smile. Or perhaps it was simply that accidental text, so human, so vulnerable, that had reminded her that behind every clinical trial and insurance form were real people with beating hearts. Her phone chimed with James's reply. "Dinner sounds perfect. My parents are taking Lily for the night, 7:00 p.m. Victoria took a deep breath and started her car. She would come back tomorrow, not as the CEO of Reynolds Pharmaceuticals, but simply as a woman taking a chance on connection for the first time in years. The next evening, Victoria spent an unprecedented amount of time choosing her outfit. Her closet was filled with power suits and formal attire, armor she'd worn to battle her way through the male-dominated pharmaceutical industry. After trying on and discarding 4 different outfits, she finally selected a simple blue dress she'd bought years ago, but never worn. It felt strange to dress for something other than intimidation. Her executive assistant had nearly fallen out of her chair when Victoria announced she was leaving at 5 p.m. In 5 years, Diane had never seen her boss leave before 8 p.m., unless it was for another business function. "Is everything all right, Ms. Reynolds?" Diane had asked, concern evident in her voice. "Everything is fine," Victoria had replied, unable to suppress a small smile. "I simply have a personal engagement this evening." "A personal engagement?" Diane had repeated, as if Victoria had announced she was joining the circus. Now, as Victoria approached James's door, she felt a flutter of nervousness she hadn't experienced in decades. She, who regularly faced down hostile boards and government regulators without breaking a sweat, was anxious about dinner with a high school science teacher. Their first official date was at an upscale restaurant where Victoria arrived wearing a simple blue dress instead of her signature power suit. "I haven't worn anything but business attire to dinner in years," she admitted, looking both elegant and somehow vulnerable. "My executive team would be shocked." "You look beautiful," James said honestly. Over dinner, he learned about the real Victoria, the woman who climbed mountains on rare vacations, who had a secret passion for astronomy, and who had sacrificed a personal life to build a company dedicated to her sister's memory. "I became the Ice Queen because it was necessary," she confessed, her fingers tracing the rim of her wine glass. "The pharmaceutical industry isn't kind to women who show emotion. Being cold and calculating was the only way to be taken seriously." "And now?" James asked softly. Victoria's eyes met his now. "I'm terrified because for the first time in 20 years, I care about something beyond my company. I care about what happens to Lily and to you." The restaurant's soft lighting cast a warm glow on her face, softening the sharp angles that looked so intimidating in boardroom photographs. James realized she was letting him see beneath the armor, showing him the woman who had been hiding behind the Ice Queen persona all these years. "You know," he said, reaching across the table to take her hand, "Lily asks about you every day. She's convinced you're some kind of superhero disguised as a businesswoman." Victoria laughed, a sound so genuine it transformed her face. "I wanted to be an astronaut when I was little, before she didn't need to finish, before her sister got sick, before her childhood dreams were replaced by a mission." "It's not too late for stargazing." James suggested Lily would love to have a stargazing partner. "I try, but I can never remember which constellation is which." "I'd like that," Victoria said softly, "to show her the stars sometime." As the evening progressed, they discovered unexpected commonalities. Both loved classic films, had run marathons, and shared a weakness for mystery novels. When James described his struggle to balance work and Lily's care, Victoria listened with an understanding few others had shown. After Sophia died, my parents' marriage fell apart, she revealed. My father buried himself in work, and my mother in grief. I was left to pick up the pieces. That's why I respect what you're doing for Lily so much. You didn't run. You didn't hide. You faced it head-on. When he walked her to her car, the night air cool around them, James found himself drawn to this complex woman who contained multitudes. The ruthless CEO and the stargazer, the ice queen and the wounded sister. When he leaned in to kiss her, she met him halfway, her lips soft and yielding in a way that belied her reputation. I should warn you, she whispered against his mouth. I'm not good at this. Relationships, vulnerability, any of it. James smiled. Good thing I accidentally sent you my best flirting material already. It's all downhill from here. Her laughter, free and unguarded, echoed in the quiet street. The next morning, Victoria arrived at her office to find her ex-husband, Richard, waiting in her reception area. His expensive suit and perfectly Koei silver hair couldn't disguise the anger in his eyes as he followed her into her office. You had me removed from the board, he said, without preamble, his voice cold. 20 years of building this company together, and you throw me out over one case. Victoria set her briefcase down calmly. It wasn't just one case, Richard. It was what that case represented. You used a child's life as leverage in your vendetta against me. That's ridiculous, he scoffed. The Parker girl didn't meet the trial criteria. She met every criterion, Victoria countered, her voice dangerously quiet. I reviewed her file personally. The only reason she was rejected was because you saw my note of interest in her case. Richard's expression hardened. You've changed, Victoria. There was a time when you understood that business decisions couldn't be personal. Now you're risking a multi-million-dollar trial on some emotional connection to a child who reminds you of Sophia. Victoria felt a familiar cold rage building, but for once she didn't suppress it. Get out of my office, Richard. Your severance package is generous. Take it and go start another company where you can prioritize profits over people. That was always your specialty. After he left, Victoria sat at her desk, her hands shaking slightly. For 20 years, she'd played by Richard's rules, compartmentalizing, prioritizing efficiency over empathy, building walls between herself and the patients her company served. Meeting James and Lily had made her question everything about the woman she'd become. That weekend, Victoria joined James and Lily for a picnic in the park. She arrived carrying a telescope and a star chart, much to Lily's delight. As the little girl examined the telescope with wonder, Victoria found herself studying James. In his worn jeans and faded t-shirt, he looked nothing like the polished executive she usually associated with. His hands were those of a working man, a teacher who did his own home repairs and carried his daughter when she was too tired to walk. When he caught her watching him and smiled, Victoria felt something inside her shift and settle. As weeks turned into months, Victoria became a regular presence in their lives. She brought Lily astronomy books and taught her to use the telescope she gifted her. She joined them for movie nights and Sunday pancake breakfasts. The woman who had once been known for making pharmaceutical executives tremble was now the same woman who sat on the floor building Lego sets with an increasingly healthy 8-year-old. James watched in amazement as Lily blossomed under the new treatment, and as Victoria blossomed away from the corporate world that had defined her for so long. The first time he kissed her properly was on his back porch while Lily slept inside. Victoria had been explaining constellations, her face animated with passion, when James couldn't resist any longer. I've been wanting to do that since that first night you showed up at my door, he admitted afterward. Victoria smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. I've been wanting you to do that since I read that accidental text. The first time Victoria stayed the night, she woke to find Lily standing beside the bed, studying her curiously. Victoria had frozen, unsure of the protocol for this situation, but Lily had simply asked, "Are you going to make pancakes with us?" Daddy makes them in funny shapes, but they all end up looking like blobs. That morning, Victoria Reynolds, who had never cooked breakfast for anyone in her adult life, found herself in James's kitchen attempting to make a pancake shaped like Saturn. When it too turned into an unidentifiable blob, Lily's peals of laughter had filled the kitchen, and Victoria had found herself laughing too, flour on her cheek and happiness bubbling in her chest. Not everyone approved of the relationship. Victoria's board members expressed concern about her distraction, and some of James's fellow teachers raised eyebrows at his dating a pharmaceutical executive. But as Lily's health improved dramatically under the treatment, their critics fell silent. The results spoke for themselves, not just for Lily, but for the dozens of other children Victoria had personally added to the trial after reviewing cases that had been previously rejected. "You're changing your whole company," James observed one evening as they reviewed the latest trial results, all because of one misdirected text. Victoria looked thoughtful. "No, not because of the text, because it made me see what I'd been missing. I built Reynolds to help children like Sophia, but somewhere along the way, I lost sight of the actual children. I became so focused on the science and the business that I forgot about the people." 6 months after the text message that changed everything, James and Lily moved into Victoria's home, a beautiful house with a garden where Lily could play and a dedicated observatory dome on the roof. Reynolds Pharmaceuticals had expanded their rare disease program, helping dozens of children like Lily access life-saving treatments regardless of their family's financial situations. "You know," James said one evening as they watched Lily running through the sprinklers in the backyard, her strength fully returned, "that text was the best mistake I ever made." Victoria laughed, a sound that had become wonderfully familiar. "I saved it, you know, in a special folder on my phone." She leaned against him. "Though the reality of kissing you is much better than just wondering about it." The transformation in Victoria didn't go unnoticed in the business world. Financial magazines that had once described her as ruthlessly efficient and coldly brilliant now used terms like innovative and compassionate pioneer. Reynolds Pharmaceuticals' new patient-centered approach was revolutionizing how rare disease treatments were developed and distributed. "They're calling you the queen with a heart now," James teased one morning, showing her a business magazine cover featuring her photo. Victoria rolled her eyes. "Journalists and their ridiculous nicknames." "I don't know," Lily chimed in, looking up from her breakfast. "I think it's better than Ice Queen. Hearts are warmer than ice." Victoria couldn't argue with that logic. 1 year to the day after the misdirected text, James knelt in their garden while Lily held a small velvet box. When Victoria came home from work and saw them waiting, she froze, her hand flying to her mouth. "You changed our lives by showing up at our door that day," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved Lily, but you also saved me from a life of fear and loneliness. We love you, Victoria. Will you marry us?" Lily bounced excitedly. "Please say yes. I already told everyone at school. You're going to be my mom." Tears, something the business world would have sworn Victoria Reynolds was incapable of, streamed down her face as she nodded, unable to speak. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, she showed James a screenshot she'd saved on her phone, his accidental text message from a year ago. "I look at it whenever I need courage," she whispered. "It reminds me that sometimes the best things in life come from our mistakes." Their wedding was small and intimate, held in the garden of their home with Lily as the flower girl. Victoria's assistant, Diane, who had watched her boss transform from the Ice Queen to a woman who now left work at reasonable hours and took weekends off, served as her maid of honor. James's parents, who had initially been wary of Victoria's wealth and status, had become her champions after seeing how she loved their son and granddaughter. 2 years later, Victoria gave birth to twins, a boy they named Michael after James's father, and a girl they named Sophia after Victoria's sister. Lily, now a healthy 11-year-old with a passion for astronomy and medicine, took her role as big sister with the same determination she'd shown in fighting her illness. The Harrington syndrome treatment that had saved Lily's life received full FDA approval, and Reynolds Pharmaceuticals established a foundation ensuring that no family would be denied access due to financial constraints. Victoria still ran the company, but with a new philosophy that balanced business success with human compassion. Their story, from a mortifying text error to a family made whole, became something of a legend among their friends and family. If you've ever made a mistake that felt like the end of the world, remember James and Victoria. Sometimes, what seems like our worst moment can open doors we never imagined. Life's greatest gifts often arrive in unexpected packages, and second chances come in the strangest forms. If this story touched your heart today, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that even our errors can lead to something beautiful when we have the courage to face them honestly.